Yeah, hi everyone. So let us start by recapping the last session. So I think in the last session, so we have discussed about TypeScript objects and how to declare TypeScript objects and the aliases of TypeScript objects. And also we have discussed how to declare the properties and how to assign the values and how to access the properties of an object. And so we also discussed about how to declare the read-only properties and nested objects. And also we have discussed about functions, like we have declared a simple function, and we discussed like why we need functions or how to create the functions. So today let us discuss about the following topics. So we'll discuss about functions with parameters. Then we'll discuss about function without parameters and function with return type, without return type, and function overloading.
You sit downstairs or in the garden?
So yeah, so what's the use of functions? So I think yesterday we discussed that whenever you see some reusable code, so if you see it's, suppose let's say you are writing the same code again and again. So instead of repeating the same code, we need to create functions. So functions will avoid the repetition of the code. So whatever the code or whatever the functionality that you wanted to use, you can move that to a function, and wherever you need that functionality, you can call the function instead of writing the code again. I think we have seen an example here. So we want to add two different numbers. So before creating the function, so we used to declare multiple variables and we used to add them and get the sum. But now we created a method function. We created a function with the name add. So this function is accepting two parameters. So we are passing those two parameters. Now, wherever you wanted to add two different numbers, we are simply calling this function. So that is the use of functions. You can reuse the code and you can call the function multiple times with the different parameters that you have provided. So simply I can say that using functions, you can reduce the repetitive code. So yeah, so now let us discuss what are the functions with parameters and without parameters. So as of now, if you observe here, we created a function with the name add, and we have passed two numbers here, a and b. So whenever you want to call this function, you must have to pass the parameters. So here, while I call the first method, so the add method, I've passed 1000 and 2000. So here these are called parameters. So whenever you call this function add, 1000 will be supplied to number A, 2000 will be supplied to number B, and this will add those two and it will give you the sum. So in this way, whenever the functions contains this kind of parameters, we call them as functions with parameters. So let me create a new file here. So I would say, so functions with parameters. And I'll rename this to function declaration. Functions declaration. Yeah. So now, so this is one example where we have declared a method with the two parameters. Here both are integer parameters. So, but you can create any different kind of parameters for your function. That is all depends on your requirement. Suppose now I want to create a function which is going to greet an user. So now let me create a function here. So I would say function. So what is the name of the function? Greet. So now I want to greet the user. So suppose let's say I wanted to pass the name of the user. So and I want to greet that user. So what is the message that I want to print? So I would say console.log. So hello, good morning. So this is the message I wanted to print. So here greet is a function. But now I would like to print the username as well, because for this greet function, I want to pass the name of an user. And this function should accept the username and it should print hello, whatever the username you pass. I want that username to be printed after hello. So since you want to pass a different kind of names, so we need to give a parameter for this function. So usually what could be the data type of a name? So it should be a string. So I would say name, which is of type string. So here I'll embed the function name, the variable name. So we need to use dollar. So provide that within the flower basis. So and pass the variable name or parameter name. So now this greet is a function which is accepting one parameter. So this is also a parameterized function. So now I would say greet. So I'll provide greet Rajesh. So the moment you call the function, the control will go here. Rajesh will be passed to this name. So then it will print hello Rajesh, good morning. So let me run this. Yeah, function. This is 02. So now you should get the output as Rajesh. Hello Rajesh, good morning. So like this, if you provide any parameters to a function, we call those as functions with parameters. So you can give any number of parameters. So earlier case, we provided two different numbers. Now I have provided a string. So in the same way, if you want, you can also pass an object as a parameter to the function. I think in the yesterday session, we have discussed about the objects. So now my intention is I'm going to send a employee object to the function. Then I want functions to print the values of that employee. So let's say that is our requirement. So now let us do that. So I'll declare one employee type. So type, so employee equal to, so I'll give ID, it is of type number, then name, string, then city. Again, this is a string. So I have declared one employee type. So now I want to create a function. So which will accept the employee object and print the information of the employee object. So I would say display employee info. Okay. So display employee info. So the function name should follow the camel case. So that's the reason the first word is small letter. So after that, the for every word, the first letter should be capital and rest are small. So what I want to pass, I wanted to pass an employee object for this. So I would say EMP. So what is the type? So the type of object is employee. So now this display employee info, this is a function which is accepting an object. So the first one is a variable name. The second one is the type of the variable, or I can say type of the parameter. Because for the functions, if we pass any variables, we call them as parameters. So for display employee information, so I'm passing a parameter with the name EMP. It is of type employee. So here employee is a object type. So now I would say console.log. So I want to print the employee information. So I would say emp dot, this is a variable. So employee dot ID, employee dot name, employee dot city. So now let me call this function. So now, yeah, I'll call this function. So what this function is accepting, this function you should pass an employee object. Suppose let's say instead of passing the employee object, I am passing tester. You will get an error because display employee info, this is a function. So what is the type of the parameter that this function is accepting? So this is accepting an object of type employee. So you need to, while you call this function, you must have to follow the same type of data. Suppose let's say if I declare a parameter type as a string, if you try to pass the integer or number, it will give an error because whenever you declare a parameter type for a function, while you call the function, you should have to pass the same type of value. If you don't pass the same type of value, it will give an error. So in this case, display employee info. So this is a function which is accepting a parameter of type employee. So here employee is an object, but while calling the function, I am passing test, which is a string. That means the function is accepting employee object, but you are passing a string object. So that is the reason we got an error. So now how we can pass this value? So I think we already know how to we already defined the structure of the employee object. Now I want to create a one object. So I would say let Rajesh of type employee. So I'll provide the data. So ID. So ID, let's I'll give 1000 and name. So name is Rajesh Kumar, let's say, and city is Hyderabad, let's say. Okay. So now we have this Rajesh object. You can simply pass this object here. That's it. So now display employee info is a method, it's a function which is accepting a employee object. So I just pass Rajesh, which is of type employee. So now as soon as you call this function, the control will go here. This Rajesh will be passed to this EMP variable or parameter. Then it is printing that values. So let me run this. Okay. So now you can see it has printed the values. So this way you can pass any type of parameters. So first I passed two numbers, then I have passed the string. Now here I have passed the employee object. In the same way, if you want, you can pass a tuple or you can pass map, you can pass arrays. So depending on the requirement, you can pass any type of parameters to a function. Okay. So these are called functions with parameters. So for a function, if you pass any type of parameters, we call them as functions with parameters. So at least if you provide one parameter, those are called functions with parameters. Okay. So now let us discuss about functions without return type. So now let me create a new file. So I would say functions without return type. Okay. Yeah. So let us take one example. So now here let's say I have two numbers. Let A, it is of type number. Let's say I have 100. B, it is of type number. So I'm assigning a value 200. So now I have another variable C. So 300, it is of type number. This is 400, let's say. So now here my requirement is I wanted to add these two numbers, and whatever the sum you get here, this sum, and I will add these two numbers, and whatever the sum I get here, the sum of these two numbers I want to add. Here I'll get 700, here I'll get 300. I wanted to add those two. So now in order to, since you are writing the same code, because here you want to add two different numbers, instead of repeating the same code, what I will do is I'll create one function. So I would say function add. So I'm passing two parameters, A, B. Okay. So now I would say console.log A plus B. Okay, because this function add is accepting two parameters. So whatever the two parameters that you pass here, it is going to add those two values and it will print the result. But what is our requirement here? So whatever the data I'll get here by adding these two numbers, and whatever the value we'll get here by adding these two numbers, the result of this one and the result of this one, both I wanted to add. So that is my requirement. So now I have a method add method. So now let me, when I call this method, it will add these two numbers. Let us do that. So now I would say add A comma B. So now let's say I'll say let result one equal to this. So again I'll give result two. So I'll give C comma D. So now let me sum these two values, result one plus result two, and let's see what we'll get. So I think we'll get undefined. Let's try that. Result 1 plus result 2. I think it's giving an error. Let's see what is the error. Cannot be applied to types void and void. Okay. So now, yeah, why it is giving void? Because, so as of now, I did not give any type, return type of this method. What is the meaning of return type? So the return type, if you declare some return type, so what it will do is it will add these two numbers and it has to return that value. So returning the value means whatever the sum of the values that you will get, that value I will return. So the you return the, I mean, I am returning the means that value can be captured, that can be stored in some other variable. So as of now, so let me run this program and see what will happen. Okay. So I want to see what will happen here. I'm just printing result one. Let's see what output we'll get. So this is in src folder, functions. Okay. So let me run. So what could be the output of result one? So now, yeah, I think you got undefined. So undefined is the return type of, you did not return anything. I just printing console.log. So it is giving you undefined. But actually, what is our requirement? So my requirement is, so whatever the value that we get after adding these two numbers, I want to store that value inside this variable result one, or I want to assign the result of this method to this result one. So now what I will do is, instead of giving console.log a plus b, here I will give the return type as number, and I will give here return a plus b. Okay. So this should be written a plus b. So what is the meaning of return statement? Why should I give return statement and why should I give number here? Because so this function add is accepting two parameters and I wanted to sum these two parameters. The whatever the value we get for these two parameters, I want to sum those values. So whatever the sum you will get, I want to store that in some variable. So if you want to store that value, you have to return that. So the moment you say return, the statement if you give, so whatever the value you will get here, that value will be given back. So that value you can store in some other variable. So now let me run this. So now what will be the output in this case? Now in this case, the output should be a plus b, which is 300. So now you see I got 300. So earlier, I did not give any return type here. If you don't get any return type, if you don't give any return type, by default, it will be void. Void means nothing. So earlier, when I did not return anything here, I call this method, I got undefined because you did not declare any return type. If I don't give any return type, it will return void. Void means nothing. So now here I give return type as number and make sure that whenever you have a return type here, this function should has the return statement and it should return a value. So in this case, since I'm returning a number, so that you should give a return statement and it should return a value. Okay. So here I got a plus b, so that is 300. 300 has been stored. Now I would say result 1 plus result 2. So because here I'm again calling this add function, passing c comma d. So it will add those two values that will be stored in result 2. So now result 1 will store the sum of a and b in result 1, sum of c and d in result 2. So now if I run this, you will get 1000 as output for result 1 and result 2. So this is the advantage of returning values from a function. So as of now, I return a number, but return type can be anything. So if you want, you can return a string, or you can return a array, or you can return an object. So anything can be written based on your requirement. So now I'll take one more example. So yeah, I would say function. So I want to create a method, so which will accept a day number, let's say like 1, 2, 3, and it should return the the name of the day. Suppose if I give 1, it should return or it should give me back Monday. If I give input as 2 for the function, I should get Tuesday. So that is my requirement. Let's see how we can write. So get day name, I would say, or I would say get week name. So what I wanted to pass, I wanted to pass a number. So day number. So I'll pass it as a number because this is a number. So day number, the data type is number. So I'll give 1, 2, 3 like that. If I give 1, then it should return Monday. If I give 2, it should return Tuesday. So now let me try that. So I think we can use the switch case. So I would say switch. So day number. So now I would say case 1. So here I'll declare a variable. Let week name. So week name by default I'm giving no week. So now if the value of case 1, if the value of this day number, which is a case variable, is 1, so then what I will do is I'll set week name equal to Monday. So give a break statement here. So similarly, I'll give 2, 3. So 2 should be Tuesday and 3 should be Wednesday. Okay. So now I'll say return week name. Okay. So now here I'll pass return type as a string because it is returning a string value. So and if you observe here, actually the input to the function is a number, but what I'm returning a string. So that means so there is no dependency for the return type based on the input parameters you pass. So I can pass all the input parameters as numbers and you can return a number. Or you can pass the input as a number and you can return a string or you can return a boolean. So you can return an object. That is all your requirement. So in this case, I'm giving input as a day number. If the day number is 1, give Monday. If the day number is 2, give Tuesday. 3, give Wednesday. That is my requirement. So for that, I just created a function get week name. So let me call this function now. So now I will call this function here. So week of 1 I will pass. So now what it will do? 1 will be passed to the day number. This is matching with the case value 1. So it will give you Monday. So now here I would say let week name equal to this. So I'm passing 1. So it will give you Monday. So let me print this. So week name. Yeah. So let me run this. Yeah, I should print Monday. So get week name. It will call this function and we have provided the input as 1 to the function. So 1 will be sent to day number. So day number is a switch case variable here. So it is matching with case 1. So it will give Monday and I am returning that. So here the return type is the input is a number, but the return type is a string. So I want to convey here that so there is no relation between the input parameters and the return type. So input parameter can be a string. You can return a number or boolean or string or array. You can do anything. So there is no relation between the input of the parameter and the value that you want to return. So in this case, we have input as a day number, which is a number, and we have written a string. So in the same way, here we returned sum of two different numbers. Here we are inputting a number and returning a string. In the same way, you can have any number of parameters depending on the requirement. Suppose if I want to add three different numbers, now you can create a function and you pass three different numbers and add them. So like that, depending on the requirement, you can keep any number of functions And for each function, you can pass different types and you can return different return type. So if you return a value for your function, these functions are called functions with return type. So here, add, this is returning a number. So this is one type of return type. Again, get week name, it is returning a string. So this is also one function with the return type. So now what is the meaning of functions without return type? So now I'll take one example. So I would say function. So write message. So here I'll simply print this console.log. Hello, how are you? So if you observe this function, so the function name is write message. I did not pass any parameters here and I'm simply printing this hello, how are you? So now this function is not returning anything because here I did not keep anything. So the return type, I haven't kept anything. Here I gave string here. Here I give number. If I give number, then that function should return a number value. If I give a string, that function should return a string value. But in this case, write message is a function. It doesn't have any return type. So if it doesn't have any return type, we call that as void. So the functions without return type have void as return type. In this case, this write message is having a return type of void. That means nothing. So these are called functions without parameter, without return type. So now let me create one more function. I'll give a function name as greet user. Greet user, and I'll pass string name. So I'm passing a parameter name, which is of type string. So I'll send here. So give this colons. So hello. Yeah. So this is the function. So now greet user is a function. It is accepting one parameter, but it is not returning anything. So if a function accepts parameters, it doesn't need to return any value. Okay. So now in this case, greet user function is accepting a string parameter, but it is not returning. So this is also one function without return type. This is a function without return type. So if you don't give any return keyword inside the function and you don't have anything to return, so these are called the functions without return type. So when should I use these functions without return type? So generally, if you don't want to return any value at the end of the execution of the function, then you can declare functions without return type. But suppose let's say once you execute a function and you want to use that result somewhere, then you have to declare the functions with return type. So yeah, this is all about functions with return type and functions without return type. So now let me create a new folder, new file, functions with parameters, sorry, with the return type. So I'll move some examples here. So this is without return type. So these two are without return type because this write message greet user. These two methods are two functions are not returning anything. So these are the functions without return type. Now here all these are with return type because add method is adding two numbers and returning that. So you have a return statement. Week name is a function which is accepting a input as a number and returning week in the back. So this is called function with return type. So this is the difference between functions with return type and functions without return type. And again, we discussed functions with parameters and without parameters. So in this case, this greet is having a parameter. So this is function with parameter. Again, this display info also function with parameter. So now let us discuss functions without parameters. So without parameters means you don't pass any parameters. So let me create one more file, functions without param. So let me create a function. So the function name is welcome. So I would print console.log. Hello, welcome to the user. So this function is called without parameters because it doesn't have any parameters. You did not provide any input to this function. So this kind of functions with which doesn't have any parameters, we call functions without parameters. So when do we use these functions without parameter? Supposedly you have some static code. It doesn't accept any input parameters. And now let's say I want to call this static code in multiple places. Then I can go declare a functions without return type or without parameters. And whenever you want to execute this static code, you can simply pass this, call this welcome method. Then it will call that function automatically. Now I want to call this. You can simply provide this. So now I'll simply call this function. So just give welcome. So as soon as you give this welcome, then this will invoke this function and the function is printing hello, welcome to the user. So it will just give you that output. So let me run this. So this is a fifth program. Yeah. So let me run. So now I simply get hello, welcome to the user. That's it. So this function, when welcome is not accepting any input or it is not returning anything. So these kind of functions are called functions without parameters. If you don't see any parameters here, that is called functions without parameters. So this is all about functions. We have discussed functions with a declaration, with parameters, without parameters, with return type, without return type. So now let us discuss function overloading. So what is meant by function overloading? So generally function overloading means you can have multiple methods with the same name and signature. So, but in the TypeScript, generally if you have idea in Java, you can have multiple methods with the same name. They can differ by order of the parameters or type of the parameters or name of the parameters. Like they can differ by order, type, and number of parameters. So let me show you an example in Java. So now I can create a method like this in Java. Add, I'll pass a comma b. So I'll print the sum. I would say system dot out dot println a plus b. So this is a function which will accept. This is a method in Java which accepts two numbers and print the sum. Again, I'm creating one more function. Here I'll pass one more parameter c. I'll add a plus b plus c. So this is called method overloading. So method overloading means you can have multiple methods with the same name. Those methods can be differ by number of parameters or order of the parameters or type of the parameters. So in this case, so let's say A is a number, B is a number. And again here, these three are numbers. Number, this is also a number. So this is I'm just declaring in Java type. This is number. So these two are differ by the number of parameters. Now I'll create one more method. So I'll give type of C as a string. So I would say A plus B plus C. So these two are differ by number of parameters. These two are differ by type of parameters. So now I'll create one more function. So I'll give B as a string, C as number. So this is called, these two are differ by order of the parameters. Here we have number, number, string. Here we have declared number, string, and number. So this is called method overloading. So in Java and other programming languages, for each method, you can have a separate definition. I can declare add with only two parameters. add with three parameters, add with three parameters with the different data types. So this is called method overloading in Java. But in TypeScript, it allows to have multiple methods with the same name, and but you can have only one implementation in TypeScript. Suppose let's say, so I have declared like this. Let me create a new file. So functions overloading. So now I'll take one use case. Function, say display. So display a number and the return type is void. So now I'll create one more function. Say I'll give string. So now if you observe here, I have declared two different methods. Display, I mean the name is same, but you have different parameters and the signature is same. So what is mean by function signature? So the function name, parameters and return type, these three things we call as signature of a function. The function name, parameters and the return type. These three things we call as signature. So in this case, the function, these two have the same name, but they differ by the type of the parameters. Here for display method, the value is number. For this display method, the value is string. So you have declared two methods with the same name, but different parameters. So this is called function overloading. So here, how many functions you have declared? I have declared two functions with the same name. So now in Java, it allows two implementations. Like what I can do in Java is I can create two functions. I can implement this function and again I can implement this function. Two functions can be implemented in Java. But in TypeScript, it doesn't allow implementation of multiple methods in function overloading. So you can only implement one function. So here we have two display functions. One is with number as input, another one is string as input. So the TypeScript allows you can have multiple methods with the same name and with the different parameters. Or you can say that you can have multiple functions in TypeScript with a different signature. In this case, this display method is having input as number. This is having parameter as string. So TypeScript allows multiple functions with the same name and with a different signature, but they cannot allow implementation of multiple functions. TypeScript, though you have declared multiple functions as part of method overloading, but it will allow you to implement only one function. And that function should satisfy all the overridden functions. So overloaded functions. So in this case, this is a display, this is also a display. Both are only differ is that input type that they are accepting. It is accepting number, it is accepting string, but the return type is same. So as per the TypeScript implementation, you can have multiple functions with a different signature, but you can implement only one function. You cannot implement all the functions. You can implement only one function and that function should satisfy all the overloaded functions. So now in this case, let me try this. So I would say function, I need to implement only one function display. So here, whatever the implementation that you do, this should satisfy all the overloaded functions. So that's the reason here I'll give value as of type any. So if I provide value type as any, it can cover this and this because if you declare data type any, then it can accept any type of value. That can be a string, number, boolean, anything in it accept. So simply I would say console.log, I'll print value. So this is the display function. So this is the overloaded display function. For the overloaded function, you can write only one body or you can do only one implementation. So in this case, I just implemented the display method. But remember that whatever the implementation that you do, so for this implementation, whatever the parameters you have given or whatever the function you have implemented, this should satisfy all the overloaded functions. In this case, this is number. Again, another display method, this is of type string. So that's the reason the function that I implemented is display. So it should cover both the functions. This display should cover, this display should cover. So that's the reason I gave value of type any. So if you declare value type as any, then it can accept any type of value. So in this case now, I would say console.log. So here I'll pass value as 1000. So it is accepting 1000. So let me call this function. Or you can directly say display of 1000. So now I'll create one call same function again with a different parameter. So now you can see display function is called with 1000 as the input. So it will call this function because you have only one implementation. So it will call this and value is of type any. So that means it can accept any type of data. So it will print 1000. So when you give the second function call, here we are passing test, same will be passed here. So because you gave the data type as any means it can hold anything, any type of data it can hold. Okay. So now if I run this, this function will give you 1000. This function will give you tester. So yeah, it should be 6. So let me run this. Yeah, so it should print, first it should print 1000, then it should print tester. So that means the same function is accepting number and it is accepting string. So this is called function overloading in TypeScript. So you can have multiple functions with the same name, but they differ by the parameters or signature. So this is called function overloading. So now we have discussed about this display method and we have overloaded this. I think in the same way, I'll create one more function. So the name of the function is add, let's say function addition, I would say addition. So it is accepting two numbers, A comma B, both are numbers. And let's say it gives you of type or return type as number. So now I'll create one more function. So yeah, again same. So here I'll give B as a string. Okay. So now I need to implement this function. So how we can implement? So simply I'll give type as any. So I would say addition. So A, it should be a number. Again, so B I am declaring as a any data type. A will declare as any and B also any because if I declare any, then only it can accept numbers and strings. Here, first parameter is number, and for the second overloaded function also, it is of type number. Here B, it is a number. Here, this is a string. So that means B should accept any type of data. So that's the reason I gave B as any. A you can give as number. Okay. So now I want to print the sum A plus B. So this is called method overloading. So I think we are getting some error here. Okay, it's saying addition is declared but never use it. Yeah, because we did not use this function anywhere. So now I have implemented this function. So function addition. So it is accepting two parameters. So I'll declare this also any. So if you declare the data type as any, so it can accept any type of data. So it will add these two numbers and give you the output. So this is called function overloading. You can declare the function once You can declare the multiple functions and you should implement only one function. So this is called function overloading in TypeScript. And I think in the TypeScript, we have in the first session, we have discussed about the flow. First, the TypeScript file will be compiled into JavaScript file. Then the JavaScript file give you the output. So we have two phases. One is the compilation phase. The another phase is run phase. So basically, so whatever we have discussed here, the method overloading. So the method overloading is a runtime polymorphism because the method overloading happens at the compile time. So this is called compile time polymorphism or static polymorphism. So method overloading is a static polymorphism in TypeScript. So because which function has to be called, that will be resolved during the compile time. Since the method that needs to be called or the function that needs to be called that decides during the compile time, we call this as compile time polymorphism or static polymorphism. So I would say method overloading is compile time or static polymorphism. So why we call this as polymorphism? Because generally, as per the object-oriented programming language definition, so the overloading means, if the same thing behaves differently at different situation, we call that as polymorphism. If the same object or same thing behaves differently at different situation, we call that as polymorphism. In this case, the same add function, if I pass two different numbers, it will sum them and give you the output. If I pass two strings, it will concatenate them and will give you the output. That means the same function is behaving differently at different values. That means it is showing different behavior at different inputs. So, and which function needs to be called, that will be decided during the compile time. So that is why we call this as compile time polymorphism or static polymorphism. So the function overloading in TypeScript is an example of static polymorphism or compile time polymorphism. So I think this is all about the function overloading.